Waiting on Christy Dabbs to come in. If you bring that. I think I'll get my picture later. Smile. Got you, boss. You're looking for me. I got you. If you'd like to follow along with the slides on your phone rather than look on the screen, the deck can be gotten by shooting that QR code.
How do you do that?
You just take a picture of that.
I would like some old people here might not know how to do that.
Oh, you're saying the process of doing that?
Yeah.
I don't have to. It's a miracle that I actually did that. I'm just going to tell you. It's an absolute miracle I figured out how to do that. Let's see.
I thought it was weird that you were asking.
No.
See if you can back and forth. You should be able to. All right. Very good. Thank you so much for all your help this morning. Lacey provided breakfast. And she's the photographer of the church. That's fancy to be a photographer. Where's Scott Carly at?
He's in there talking to me.
I'm just going to let him get started. I'm not waiting on him to finish talking.
Yeah, he's in there.
There you go. All right. So as we're getting out our NLT scripture journals, our fancy books, I think we're on page 53. Yeah, I think that's right. We'll kind of backtrack just a little bit before we get started this morning. Is it working? No?
Yeah.
It's on.
Yeah, I'll raise it.
Oh, you go. All right. So previously, do what?
Chapter we on, for one.
Verse 1. No, we're like on verse 8. Critics.
We're still on page
Still on the
53?
first, yeah.
I think we are. I think so.
Yeah, this is only the fourth week. Yeah,
Oh,
we're still
okay.
on the
Lisa Carly, you missed 2 of them. All right, here we go. Just kidding. All right, we'll see. All right. But no, we are going to be backing up just a hair, talking about, we're backing up. Yeah, we're going to back up all the way back to Genesis before we get started today. Just letting you know. Just go ahead and prepare yourself for it. That's very funny. I think it was Lacey even who said, we're not going to read a verse today, are we? I was like, nope, not today. Anyway, today we are though.
The first week, because
That's the first
I was like all into the first chapter.
Yes, now you're like Pat, you're like what happens in chapter 2? Forget it. We're not getting there today. Let's go ahead and tell you.
Okay.
Previously in Judges, we talked about the first 8 verses. We talked about the preamble, those first 2 verses, how they give these signs of hope of here's God, He's with us. We're coming in where everything's going as planned. We're walking with God. We're working with God. This is the design, God's design of how we're going to take back the land. And then we get to these military failure reports. And then we talked about how the introduction itself is these two introductions side by side, the military report and the religious report. And we're still going to be in the military report today. But anyway, the military report opens up with Judah. And it's the concentration of the first half of the first chapter for sure. God telling the Israelites and Judah, send up Judah first. Judah makes this agreement with his brother Simeon, and from there they are going to work together. We talked about what a normal cooperative alliance that they have, just based on their geography. Just that alone, it obviously helps Simeon to help Judah. And then we started discussing their successes. The first is the upland campaign. They go up to Bezek, and they encountered Adonai-Bezek there, who's a very strange individual. He loses the battle, then he escapes, but the Israelites soon capture him. The reason why that's recorded in there, I don't know. I mean, that's some intricate details there, but they give him the same treatment that he gave his enemies. And instead of following God's orders, they follow the Canaanite tradition. They do to him what he does to everyone else. Already slowly falling away from God's plan. And then we talked about the irony there where he's the one who says, human beings will have to give account to God for their actions. The the Canaanite is the one who says this. It's very. Last week Jeff called it. He didn't say Hebrew humor. I think he said Jewish humor. I don't know, but that's what it is. It's the sly, dry. The funny thing here is the one guy who's doing this, the guy who's dancing is not the dancer. Everyone else is the dancers, and this one guy who can't dance is the one dancing. That's kind of a good example of Israelite humor, or whatever you're going to call it, Hebrew humor. But they encounter and defeat the parasites, and then there were 10,000 enemy warriors killed. Adonai Bezek, he goes to Jerusalem. Just make all the noise you want to.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to be quiet.
And he goes to Jerusalem and he dies there. And this alliance of Simeon and Judah attack Jerusalem, and they're victorious there. And then the lowlands campaign starts, and they go down to fight the Canaanites in Negev, the arid terrain desert of Negev, and the western foothills. And for me, they're just south of Bethlehem here. They're working their way down. When you start from Jerusalem, and then you start going down on your map, you can see Jerusalem. And then south is Bethlehem. Then you go south to Hebron, and you go south to Debir. And that line that you're connecting there, if you were to draw a line from those cities, is the western foothills. That is the foothill of the western mountains, just to the side of it there. It's a very common name we all hear in the news all the time. It's the West Bank. It's the West Bank of the western foothills. You don't want to go like that. Is where the battles are. They've been going on for thousands of years there, and that's our common term that we use for that area right there. Non-Jews often call them the Judean mountains. That would be the Palestinian name. If there's two words though that I've learned that you don't use, especially when you're dealing with Hebrew stuff, it's Palestine and Judean mountains. They hate those. They hate those terms. So anyway, but you got the western mountains, which is this big, huge wall, and then it goes down to the Jordan, the rift, and then coming up the other side, you got the eastern plateau, which we're not going to be over there today. But you can see the foothill of the western mountains right there causes this barrier, and there's this big, there's the uplands, and then there's the lowland, and it's very. You lost? It's very distinct, and the geography has so much to do with these battles that we're about to get into. So that's where we're picking up today. I just feel like one undiscussed matter that I didn't get to last week or the week before, says Lisa, is one issue that I feel like we need to hold close to our hearts, that the Israelites hold close to their hearts, is the Abrahamic covenant. It is this relationship with the land itself. Yahweh makes this covenant with Abraham, which becomes a covenant with Israel, and it's passed down through the patriarchs. God initiates the redemption of the world through his chosen people. And he promises salvation. This covenant's continued and readopted throughout the whole Bible. And in my head, I always see it like an hourglass, because it starts off with this, everybody's included, and then it goes down to just Abraham and his family. And then throughout the rest of the Bible, it extends out, especially like Acts 15, it extends out to everybody again, And that's kind of the way universal or just salvation from Yahweh is. But the part we need to focus on is the promise. Yahweh speaks to Abram. He's a nomad, and he promises him a homeland. And back in Genesis 12, the Lord said to Abram, "Leave your native country, your relatives, and your father's family, and go to the land that I will show you." Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "I will give this land to your descendants." And Abram built an altar there and dedicated it to the Lord who had appeared to him. "I'm giving all this land, as far as you can see, to you and your descendants as a permanent possession. I will give you so many descendants that like the dust of the earth they cannot be counted. Go and walk through the land in every direction, for I'm giving it to you." And then lastly, this is a couple verses, but this is pretty good. "As the sun was going down, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a terrifying darkness came over him. Then the Lord said to Abram, 'You can be sure that your descendants will be strangers in a foreign land, where they will be oppressed as slaves for 400 years. But I will punish the nation that enslaves them, and in the end they will come away with great wealth. As for you, you will die in peace and be buried at a ripe old age. After 4 generations, your descendants will return here to this land. For the sins of the Amorites do not yet warrant their destruction. After the sun went down and darkness fell Abram saw a smoking fire pot and flaming torch pass between the halves of the carcasses. So the Lord made a covenant with Abram that day, saying, I have given this land to your descendants, all the way from the border of Egypt to the great Euphrates. The land now occupied by the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaites, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites. Everybody was there. Isaac inherited this promise. Jacob, and then Joseph, and then Moses. And then the entire 40 years they're wandering. Moses is talking about and promising. He's continuing this whole, this is our land. When we get there, everything will be fine. Yes.
And we're gonna really probably show how much I don't know by asking this question right now. Is this the same land that, God promised? I know it's the land God promised, but is it the same land that they're still fighting over today?
Same land.
It is? So that's why they always felt like, it was theirs, and then when it finally, 1948, we recognized it. I'm trying to get it in my head right?
Yes.
But now, just recently, in October, right, the terrorists came in, and they're still trying to say it's theirs, even though we gave them we didn't, but they gave them a little bit of that land, and then they want all of it.
Yes.
They're still fighting over.
So much of it is being occupied. That's a good way of looking at it.
It's being occupied.
It's been occupied the whole time. They've never gotten every single bit of it back. It's one way to look at it. But the land, when we talk about the north of Egypt, everything north all the way to the Euphrates, right now in our present day, which we'll get to here in just a second, but the Gaza Strip is the main spot. The Gaza's down on the south in your map. It's over there against the water. It's on the left. It's up against the Mediterranean Sea. And it has been occupied by the Hamas group since 2017. And so they battled over that land. Israel said, this is our land, as far as, all the way back to Genesis 12. They say, it's our land, all the way back to Genesis 12. So,
does it not just totally get all over you that from the very beginning, everything God said is just happening and it's happened? If you really think about it, it's pretty
crazy.
Pretty overwhelming, to me. And you know what? I feel so heartbroken for the Jewish people. One, of course, they don't believe in Christ, but because they are, they're just so holding on to what God gave them and everything, and having to live in that situation. Okay, that's all. I just wanted to say that is that land.
After generation, they're sure we're going to end it here, but it continues. Another thing to keep in mind, I really think, I don't know, maybe I didn't realize it at some point, but when you think about just Jerusalem itself, the most sacred place in the world is the Temple Mount, up on top of the Mount Moriah there. And it has been under Muslim control for 100 years.
Which is devastating.
Which is crazy, And in the center of Jerusalem, there's this area that they don't control. It's very strange. There's just wars constantly over that.
And when they start, when some things start happening, we better get ready. You know what I mean? When
that's true.
The last little, when they start. But I don't know. I think we might be raptured out. I don't know. I don't really know. When they start rebuilding the temple for the last.
Don't worry about that then.
I hope not.
But so if there's one thing I wanted to kind of do though, it is kind of get this connection that they have to this land. The whole time they're out wandering in the desert, they're arguing, all these murmurings, groanings. They're being told, man, when we get to the promised land, everything. This is the land of milk and honey. This is the land, that we've been slaves for 400 years to get back to this, And
well, it took them 40 years to make a short journey. What was it, 10, 11 miles? Something like that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of arguing.
No, that's exactly right.
I'm sure they were bad.
They probably were. All that arguing, that's funny. But so it's like we lose that connection. We look like, why are we attacking all these people? I think it's very easy to be disconnected when you don't have the physical map. You don't see the maybe pictures of the land, those kind of things. Even when in Joshua's life, in Genesis 40, Joshua says, "For I was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I've done nothing, but they should put me in a dungeon." So even at that time, during Joshua, when he's taken down to Egypt, it's called the land of the Hebrews. So at that point, Abraham and his family they have control of the land, to some degree. But it's because it's always occupied. It's always being held by the Canaanites, and God, it's God's desire that the Israelites take it back over, if they follow His instructions.
Hence the problem.
There you go. That's exactly right. And so right here where we are in this the western mountains on the western foothills, this is where Genesis 12 happened. This is where Moses, is there. This is where Abraham was. Abraham finds a cave there. Machpelah is the name of it. Sarah dies. He buries her here. Abraham's buried in the cave in Hebron. Jacob and Isaac, they're both buried there. The earliest photograph, which is very small here, but this is from 1890. This is a picture of Hebron. But you can see it's on the foothills of the mountain range. This is the land that God promised Abraham 500 years before this. So they've been waiting for this. They've returned only to have it occupied by the Canaanites, the descendants of Ham. Canaan, who is Noah's grandson, was cursed for his father's offense. And these people have occupied the Israelite land, and they're evil. There's no other way to say it. That's another thing that we don't take in as much is they have this evil religious system. It's polytheistic. Baalism would be the name of their religion. They worship Baal. I could say Baal, but I'm not going to. It's just because I'm just going to say Baal. It's easier. I'm from the South. Many of their traditions are similar to the Israelite traditions. Many of them are similar. Some of their practices are very similar. So it's very easy for them to adopt these other things. They worship on the same days. They're always happy at these different solstices and seasons and different things. They have the same type of feasts. So it's very easy to pull in some outside belief into your own. It's very easy to pull in hunting for eggs and a rabbit on Easter into a Christian religion and still see it as the same thing. But they have this sacrificial system. They have their worship practices are similar, but they share a lot of common traditions. In the majority of the area, the land depends on the rain. We're down here in the Negev. We're in this dry, arid area, and your land depends on the rain. It's valuable. The rivers are too small to irrigate the land. Canaanite worship, they worship many gods, but they all deal with weather and crops. That's one of the main focuses. Baal is the Lord of the earth, whose powers gave life to the earth. Baal brings the rain. He's the rain bringer. It is a very common translation of many of his names. His symbol is the bull. He's strong. He is sometimes just a bull head, sometimes a man body. It always symbolizes strength, power, and fertility. You like that meme? I like that one. That's a pretty good one. Wall Street there. But he's depicted standing on a cloud, holding a lightning bolt in his hand. He's the storm god, the bringer of rain. And this is a constant in their lives. They're surrounded with people who are a part of this world. Who their culture is Baal. So when they see someone who does this prosper, it becomes more attractive to them. It is so us. It's like, let's just pretend that we're surrounded with these well-known, well-liked people that we would call more successful than ourselves. Although they're not Christians, would we be affected? Would we try to emulate them and be like them? Let's just call them celebrities. Celebrity, the definition, is a well-liked, well-known person. What if we see them demonstrating sinful behavior, greed, pride, lust, envy, all these things? Would that affect us? Oh man, does it ever? And so in the same way, we'd be like, how can you be pulled over to these people who are sacrificing children? You know, we obviously wouldn't fall for that. So, do not forget that as we continue through the study at the time of Judges, that's what's going on. There are these evil people among them. And of course, they themselves are people just like we are. And they fall victim to all these things just like we would. They're just as blind to these others who affect their walk, just like we are blind to these people who are around us that affect our walk, our relationship with God. One last thing about Canaanite worship, because I just feel like you have to have a sense of it. Some of their work, most of their worship includes all types of things, but sexual acts is definitely an underlying thing. Sexual acts in the temple. That in turn excites Baal, and then you will be more fertile. You will be more blessed by this. That's literally the thought process there. Offering your firstborn as a sacrifice, especially if it's a female, would bless you. This would help the longevity of your life. It wouldn't be a burden on your life. It allows you to prosper longer before becoming a parent when you have a male heir. They don't look at this as death or murder. They look at it as they and their descendants will be blessed by this offering. And for me, it sounds very familiar to the same setting that we're in 2024. First mention of Baal is here in Deuteronomy 4:3. Your eyes have seen what the Lord did at Baal Peor. For the Lord your God destroyed from among you all the men who followed the Baal of Peor. Now Peor is a mountain just right there in our path. Oh, I love this. It's so little. It's just south of Bethlehem, on the way to Hebron, though. That's exactly where we are. That's exactly where Baal comes from. The whole thought process. South of Jerusalem, along the foothills, south of Bethlehem, on the way to Hebron, and that's where we're going to pick up right there in verse 9. We'll have a prayer real quick. Dear Lord, we just thank you so much this morning for helping us open your Word and discovering more about the history of the Bible. We ask that you continue to challenge and change us this morning, and it's in your name that we pray. Amen. All right, so we're going to pick up in verse 9, and I'm going to read a few verses. Chapter 1.
Oh, I didn't know.
One of these days, you know what I'm saying?
That's a serious question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Still in one.
It's like 43 or something. There's a lot. I'm not going to get that far. My goal is 20. If we get to verse 20 today, we're doing pretty good. Back to Deuteronomy. Anyway.
Yeah, she just wants to turn the page of color.
See, that's the goal. I'm goaling is you're finished with that. Oh, you finished that already? Whatever. Whatever. All right, verse 9. Then they went down to fight the Canaanites living in the hill country, the Negev and the western foothills. Judah marched against the Canaanites in Hebron, formerly called Kiriath Arba, defeating the forces of Sheshai, Ahiman, and Talmai. From there, they went to fight against the people living in the town of Debir, formerly called Kiriath Sefer. Caleb said, I will give my daughter Aksa in marriage to the one who attacks and captures Kiriath Sefer. Othniel, the son of Caleb's younger brother Kenaz, was the one who conquered it. So Aksa became Othniel's wife. When Aksa married Othniel, she urged him to ask her father for a field. As she got down off her donkey, Caleb asked her, what's the matter? She said, let me have another gift. You already have given me the land in Negev. Now please give me springs of water too. So Caleb gave her the upper and lower springs. All right. So we pick up here in verse 9 with this transitional verse that starts the lowland campaign. We go down, and then he says there's these three topographic areas. There's the hill country, there's the desert, and there's the western foothills. And somehow we're all there all at the same time, which is very, when you look at the pictures, you see how it's all three of those things. But moving into verse 10 there, the conquest of Hebron is man, there's just so much going on in just one verse. It's crazy. The author says that Judah marched against the Canaanites in the city. And he gives the modern name, and then he gives the ancient Canaanite name of the city. which is very, he's telling us something about that, you know. Used to be called this, then we came in and took over. It is a good way of looking at it. Or, now everybody knows it as this, now it's this. I kind of like that also. But Hebron, formerly called Kiriath Arba. Another reason why is because the Israelites themselves know that land. They are acquainted with, they know the cave. They know the history of Hebron. They know this is where Abraham, you know, is from. This is the cave of the patriarchs. Genesis 24 tells us Hebron is where Rebekah lived. Isaac, he's living out in the Negev. He sends his servant in to the well in Hebron. He marries her there. They're all buried there in Kiriath Arba. This is our land. This is the land of our fathers that Moses has been talking about all the way from Egypt. This is where Abraham came to ask for volunteers when he goes over the western mountains to go rescue Lot. All these things happen right here in this exact place. The history of Genesis is all right here. And these evil Canaanites with these pagan idols are corrupting the land, our promised land. And as I said last week, all of the conquest has been laid out before. In Joshua 15 is an excellent place where all of this is from. These are somewhat flashback stories, but he's setting up what's happening. In Joshua 15, it says, the Lord commanded Joshua to assign some of Judah's territory to Caleb, son of Jephunneh. I don't know. Caleb and his dad. So Caleb was given the town of Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, which has been named after Anak's ancestor. Caleb drove out the three groups of the Anakites, the descendants of those people, and the sons of Anak. So here we have the exact same three people referenced, son of Anak. Here, the author of Joshua tells us that Caleb, the commander of the army of Judah, he defeats these three groups of Anakites. And he names the exact same three that we name here. I just feel like that's written far before this. It's just a very good connection point, I think. But the significance or the importance of Hebron here to the Israelites, it's given to Caleb. I think that's pretty good. Later in 2 Samuel, it'll be the capital of Israel. Before Jerusalem becomes the capital of Israel, it's the capital of Israel for like 7 years. David, he builds his city there to some degree, and then they move to Jerusalem. But it's a very important city throughout the history of Israel. So then in verse 11, we go into the conquest of Debir. We move further south. If you're on your map there, you can see the relationship from Hebron to Debir. There's a little bit of travel there. And it's called formerly Kiriath Sefer, which is the city of the letter, or the city of the document. It is another good, just straight literal translation there. Kiriath Arba, the first one, is city of the four. The reason why I didn't call it out is because we don't know what the four are. We don't know if that's 4 cities, 4 kings, 4 people groups. We don't know. But it's the city of the four. But Debir is labeled in the NLT as a town. It comes up to the town of Debir, which is very strange. I did all kinds of research and I could not figure out why they call it that. There's no other translation that calls it that. It's kind of weird. Kind of diminishes it for me a little bit, you know. Instead of the city of Debir, we got the town of Debir. But from there they attack the people of Debir. It is a very common, translation of that verse. Then the author tells us our little second anecdote that he gives us the one about Adonai, Bezek, and how he was, terrible and the end's terrible. But here's this little one right here. This starts with Caleb's challenge. So Caleb said, whoever can take Kiriath Sefer can marry my daughter Axa. Then Othniel, his nephew, responds by taking the city, and he gets Axa. That's a good way to just minimalize that storyline there. Othniel, he's our first judge. He's our first savior, I want to call him. We're going to focus on him in super great detail when we get to chapter 3, so I don't want to spend too much time on him today. But I do want to give him a face. I feel like in my head, if I can read a book and I give that guy, if I can give Harry Potter a face, he's so much easier for me, So my face is Harrison Ford. You may not realize. Go to that one before where he's got the turban. Yeah, that's a good one for me. But anyway, this is going to be Othniel. as long as you think of, when you think of Othniel, you think of Harrison Ford, you're right on track with me. He is young, he's strong, he's brave, he is exceptional compared to the other saviors for sure. He is, I like that. I just like giving him a character. That's an excellent one. Keep that, keep his face up there, it's better. But so in laying out Othniel as the face of Caleb's younger brother, the author is emphasizing that Othniel represents the next generation. They're not saying this to say that he's young, they're just saying he's this up-and-comer. So many modern readers, liberal modern readers, would take this section as this is a very anti-woman section, you know? They think that Caleb's mistreating his daughter, he's treating her as property, an object rewarded to another man for a job well done.
Pretty much.
And so, see, we take this modern view of romance that we have in our culture and we like stick it on these ancient people, whereas their divorce rate was like 0. Just throwing that out there. Now, there's other reasons for that, but anyway.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's other reasons for that. She lived happily ever after, AXA. Anyway. But she would have been honored. Come on. She would have been honored to have been able to marry Othniel. This would have been, there's no more capable, bachelor than Othniel. Yeah, that's true. The thing that we're given here in this anecdote that helps us understand them a little bit better is, first off, they marry. Caleb gives them the Negev land. That's already thrown in there if you read that. They say, you've already given us this. But AXA wants more. AXA asks Othniel to go ask Caleb for a field here. She gets down from her donkey. He's like, here we go. Doesn't wait for him to go do it. She goes and does it herself. She then impatiently asks Caleb for springs of water too. Caleb's response is he gives her the upper and the lower springs. I don't think that you can read this part without understanding she's a lot. It's okay though that she's a lot, but she's a little bit. But when you tell the story of Caleb and AXA, there's some important things to take from this. I think the author is not just relating us back to Caleb. It's not just relating us back to this time when we were when the generation that knew the Lord, but he's also giving us this family scene right here of a functioning family on some degree. Everybody's talking. Everybody is in a good relationship with each other. Things are working. And I think that's kind of like the underlying thing that we're supposed to see here in this part is that it's not the whole daughter's not talking to father and she's mad at this person and these people are mad at it is this functioning family here in this little tiny anecdote. It's a picture of the Israelites prospering in the land and they're able to take it back, in this one little story right here. It is a flashback story, but all the characters are seen in a positive light to some degree, which is another positive thing, which is not going to happen for very long. But Caleb, he's this model of faith, and the more you study him, the more he's terrific. He is not a true born Israelite. He's a convert, whatever you want to call it. His name means dog in Hebrew, so that alone, you would never name your kid Caleb in those days. But he's not a natural born Israelite. But he has, Numbers 14 says, and this is God speaking, only my servant Caleb, because he had a different spirit and has followed me fully, I will bring him into the land where he had gone, and his descendants will possess it. So Caleb's challenge is promoting the conquest to move forward. Hey, I can't do this by myself. I took Hebron. He challenges others to take the beer. He is promoting the conquest going on. Othniel, he emerges as this brave warrior, fearlessly defeats the enemy and claims his bride. And then AXA, she is looked at positively. She's this example of a womanly propriety where in this world of patriarchy, here she is, she stands out as voicing her own opinion, as somewhat independent, although she's still working in the frame. I don't want to paint her in the wrong light there, but for the first 6 books of the Bible, women are looked at in a specific way. And I do feel like there are many stories that we'll try to highlight here and there in Judges where women's roles definitely change. You know, they're definitely, they open up. Judges is more gender fluid, you know? No, they show this large scale advances in the roles of women and their involvement and how they're treated. So, Acts is shown as resourceful, and she's respectful of her father, and the family's shown as functioning. They're communicating, treating each other respectfully. One thing that I think is often mistaken in this is not a dowry. That is a common thing that De Beer is part of the dowry, but we know that Caleb gave him the Negev also. This is a request for a blessing. That's what she's asking for. She doesn't overstep her bounds. She felt that she can do better than the Negev. These unwatered lands would have been worthless. Similar to Tara and I were talking about yesterday, wetlands. Wetlands in North Georgia are considered worthless. You can't build anything on it. So then you just donate it to the county and you can build soccer fields on it. But anyway, but the story is seen as very respectful. So that's one thing to get out of that. And in so many ways, it parallels like the story of Ruth, this little episode here, where you've got this covenant faith. It's in everyday life. You've got these non-native Israelites in there showing their faith, functioning in Israelite society, and succeeding. But we're going to get back to Othniel more in chapter 3. But moving on. In verse 16, we pick up on a different part of the story as we continue on in the settling in Arad. This is verse 16. When the tribe of Judah left Jericho, the city of palms, the Kenites, who were descendants of Moses' father-in-law, traveled with them into the wilderness of Judah. They settled among them there. They settled among the people there, near the town of Arad in the Negev. So Arad, which is a very famous landmark still today. Tel Arad is the name of it if you want to look it up. But it is it's up on top of this mountain. You can see miles just everywhere around it. It's a fancy picture there, exactly. It's an ancient fortress, though. It's very similar to right beside it. If you to draw a line from Arad on your map towards the Dead Sea, right there in the middle of the Dead Sea, there's another one called Masada, which is the same thing where you go up and you can just see miles, and you can see, obviously, it would have been a very difficult place to take because they can see you coming, you know. So Arad is taken by these non-Israelites, the Kenites, the descendants of Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, which we just talked about, not too long ago, almost 2 months ago. But Jethro, he's the priest of Midian, and he's Exodus 3, Exodus 18, and he's there when Moses is leaving. Moses is heading out with the Israelites, and he gives him some advice on how to deal with them, break them up into groups, and all this kind of stuff. Helps him with his problems. We talked about Jethro, how he is multi-God. He's not a monotheist. He's a henotheist. He's got a devotion to the single, this God, while he accepts the existence or possibility of existence of other deities. And it's a major view throughout Judges to not just accept, Yahweh, but to also accept Baal and Asherah and all these other gods who are functioning in the same place at the same time in the view of the Canaanites. But he accepts God, and so here's his descendants, the Kenites, the subgroup of the Midianites, here in Arad. It says they leave Jericho, which again, on your map is way up north. They call it the City of Palms. City of Palms means oasis. That's a pretty good one. If you go to Jericho today, it's surrounded by palm trees. The walls are not there anymore, but the palm trees still are. Anybody else familiar with the other city of palms in the United States?
Miami.
That's close. It's close.
West Palm.
West Point.
It's Fort Myers. Fort Myers is the city of palms in Florida. Anyway, but it's an oasis. That's the whole point. But here's the issue with verse 16. They settled among the people there. They didn't eliminate the Canaanites. Here they are, again, not following through with what they're supposed to be doing. Not, exterminating is a strong word, but not getting rid of all the Canaanites, all of their things, all of their ways. They settle in with them. They're sowing the seeds of Canaanization that will grow and grow as we continue on. Verse 17, sacking of Horma, which is an excellent study. If you ever want to look up Horma, there's all kinds of beliefs on the city. But it says in verse 17, then Judah joined with Simeon to fight against the Canaanites living in Zephath, and they completely destroyed the town. So the town was named Horma. And that just reads very funny to me, you know. So they destroy this whole town of Rome, and then they're going to call it destroyed. It's pretty much that's what they call it. Now, and we're continuing south. When we come out of Arad there on your map, Horma means destruction. So they name it Horma after they tear up the city of Zephath. And but they do follow the law of Harem here that we talked about last week to wipe out completely. This land is now unusable for humans. If you're trying to find it on your map, it was wiped out completely. I like that one, right? It's pretty good. Everybody's looking at it, they're like, hold on, where's Horma here? It's not there, it's wiped out completely. But it would be east of Beersheba. So you can see we've already taken a turn there. We've left the western foothills and we're now moving west across the desert, across the Negev. Any scholar, or all scholars that I saw, teach that Horma would have been in Simeon. So as you're coming into that area there, this is good. It would have been, gosh, that is almost unreadable, but it's right there. Just to the side of Beersheba. And then the treatment of Zephath shows us that when Simeon is named with Judah, they work together. The alliance, once the alliance is named, they follow through with the orders. I think that's a pretty good thing to keep in mind. When it's just Judah by itself, when it lists it, it doesn't. Maybe somebody from Simeon wrote it. You know, they're like, hey, anytime we're included. No, just kidding. But so verse 18 starts as we continue on along the southwest, the coastal lowlands. It says in verse 18, in addition, Judah captured the towns of Gaza, Ashkelon, and Ekron, along with their surrounding territories. And for me, you know, you can easily see those three cities. You know, you can connect the line there if you want. We continue westward, and then we go up north along the coast. We hit the coast of the Mediterranean, and this is the area where later the Philistines will take over. The Philistines are known for their 5 cities. This is 3 of them. It's super strange here that the author doesn't mention the Philistines here. To even say something like, later this will be the land of the Philistines, because he has all these little notes that he throws in there for the modern reader in his time. And in his time, the Philistines would have been in charge of that area. So it's kind of weird that he doesn't list that there. Because even by the end of this book, somebody's being bad, but even by the end of the book, they'll be in charge of it. But the treatment of the people in these 3 cities is not mentioned, which is kind of weird, because every city that we've named up to this point, we tell what the end result is. So is that positive? Is that negative? Are we just assuming that we took over these 3? For me, I look at it in a way that I know the Philistines are going to end up there. So very, very similar to some of the other places, Jerusalem, for example. It's only a matter of time. Gaza, Ashkelon, and Ekron, they're listed in order as you turn, you go back up north along the coast there, and then you turn back in from the sea, and you can kind of see where we're heading from there. But like the West Bank, like we said earlier, with Gaza, it's super mentioned on our news reports. Any type of military update from around the world will include the Gaza Strip. Daily, as the Israelites battle the Hamas group, who's been occupying the land since 2017. So then, in closing, we'll verses 19 and 20, which is kind of the summary of the campaigns. And then he closes out the Judah part. In verse 19, the Lord was with the people of Judah, and they took possession of the hill country. But they failed to drive out the people living in the plains who had iron chariots. The town of Hebron was given to Caleb as Moses had promised, and Caleb drove out the people living there, who were descendants of the 3 sons of Anak. So here's the conclusion of the campaign in these 2 kind of summary statements. Everything ends great. We all knew all the information from verse 20 for me. Man, in verse 19, there's like this new information that I don't know why we haven't mentioned this yet, you know? The Lord's with Judah. They took possession of the hill country, but they failed to drive out the people who were living in the plains who had iron chariots. And I do think that's kind of an early clue that everything didn't go well. In the end, you can look at this military report as a failure. It is a good way to look at it, because instead of we wiped out all of the people in the hill country and the plains, that is not what it reads. For me, like when we take the town of Jericho, how can we not take these other towns? Like in the manner in which they took Jericho in particular, when God's with you, He's with you, and there is no hope for people who are against God. Who would dare face, who would be an enemy of God? Well, when you don't bring Him with you, things are different. The result is different.
You think they were really, did sin kind of creep in and they
Absolutely.
really realized that God wasn't with them?
I think they looked to themselves. They,
Yeah.
we might have did
Another
all that.
modern day
We
problem.
might have did all that back there, but man, it sure is a big problem to bring the whole Ark of the Covenant with us. Let's just leave that guy. Let's go on and let's see what we can do. Leave the trumpets in the pots. Let's take the swords.
Just like what we would from.
Exactly what we do. Yeah, that's exactly right. And so we get to this part here where we find that the Canaanites have superior technology to the Israelites. And this is a story that's going to continue all the way through the next 5 books of the Bible. But the Israelites win the battles in the foothills and the mountains where the chariots aren't a factor. But in the plains, the chariots are superior. I think that's a pretty good way to look at it. It lists them as iron chariots, which they would not have been completely made of iron. I think that's a pretty fair assumption at this time. This is before the Iron Age. Iron would have been just as rare as gold and silver. So I like the term gold-plated. Is that a gold necklace? Well, it's gold-plated. Well, is it really gold? Not really, but it has gold on it. That's the way I look at it. It's kind of decorated with, or lined with, coated or overlaid with iron. But in the end, it made it too strong to be anyway, so you can look at it however you want to. But definitely at this time, this would have been a luxury metal. This would have been a very rare thing. And to put this on your chariots would have been elite status. It would have been like, those Panzer tanks. Here you come with like this tank, and it's just nothing can stop it. That's the same thing that they're trying to get across here. In this time, to say Iron Chariot, this thing is unstoppable. We did not stand a chance with our pitchforks and slingshots. But so their technology is too much, and then that kind of closes that part. Although in our NLT it starts into the next paragraph there. That's really the close of that first campaign. The point of that being, the failure of the military report. That is the close there. It's the end of the account of the tribe of Judah's fortunes. And then next week we will we'll get into the remaining tribes. How did they fare? Did they do better than Judah? What failures did they have? What successes did they have? So, very good. Anybody got any comments, questions, or angry outbursts? I know for me, I went ahead and threw it out there because I already have somebody picked for each one of the judges. But to go ahead and get Harrison Ford out there, I just feel like there's no way in our lives as Americans we are not familiar with that guy's face, And it's just he's a hero. That's who he is, That's the first thing you think of. It's not kind of like somebody who plays good and bad.
Danny DeVito.
Danny DeVito, is he good and bad? I don't know.
He's a
Maybe-
bad one.
I'm thinking like maybe Denzel. Denzel's kind of bad sometimes. You don't know. Hey, is he bad? I don't know. But like, he only plays good guys. Can't think of good and bad. Anyway, but keep that in mind as we go out. This week you can pick up there at verse 21, and you can read the rest of the chapter. We probably won't get to the rest of the chapter next week, but that'll be our goal. So that way at least Lisa can turn the page. So anybody have any prayer requests that you want to share with us? We can pray for you real quick. Maybe praise reports. We're very happy to have Nancy back in class this morning. Very good. She's She's our one online follower, and we didn't even have to record it today. You know, very good. Anybody else have anything going on?
Pray for my roommate.
She leaves a lot. I know she does. I'm up with you on that. No, what's she going through?
She's just having a lot of trouble.
But she's not afraid of the dark, she turned the light out so Nancy
Yeah,
can
that's
see.
exactly right. That's exactly right. I'm with you on that. We in our house, our light is haunted in our bedroom, and just like 4 times last night after 12 o'clock, it just turns on. It's like, it just turns on all the time.
I mean, have you been in your house?
Yeah.
You're old.
No, it's,
There's a ghost.
yeah, no, and he likes to just turn on the one light. I feel like I'm supposed to
Do you
follow
have
that.
a Google Home, smart home, cause ours does that, that's
Yes.
what's going on.
That's, I know where like
We don't have Google, we have Alexa.
you have to wait until it like resets or something.
Yeah, that's what's going on.
I just figured it's time to get up. You know?
I'm sorry.
Yes. Very funny. All right, so we'll pray real quick and then we'll be dismissed. Dear Lord, we just thank you so much for bringing us here this morning, for opening your word to us this morning, helping us understand some of these details as we further ourselves in the book. We ask that you continue this morning to keep us in worship. Help us to focus on you as we go into the sanctuary. It's in your name that we pray. Amen. Turn this thing off before my phone falls over here. I was sure when Larry went back there, he was gonna knock it over. It's just hanging on there. It's like just sitting there. It's not even. Oh, it's not buckled on. No.